It's been over 60 years since Mattel introduced Barbie. That, of course, the old Barbie World song. The toy maker has recently offered a variety of different dolls with a variety of personalities, professions, and cultural backgrounds. Mattel is now offering new creatable world line of gender-neutral dolls that allow children to customize them. The child can decide whether it'll be a boy, a girl, or neither, what kind of hair it has, as well as the clothes. Mattel spoke to over 250 families with kids across the gender spectrum in preparing for this release. With more on this idea and how it might be received by the public, we are joined on the phone by Rebecca Haynes, media studies professor at Salem State University in Massachusetts. Also going to be joined by Christia Brown, professor and associate chair of development, social and health psychology at the University of Kentucky, and by Miro Copic, who's a marketing lecturer at San Diego State University's Fowler College of Business. He's co-founder and principal partner of Bottom Line Marketing and a former chief marketing officer at Hasbro's Wizards of the Coast division. Start out with Rebecca and Miro. Great to have you with us. Thank you both. And also have Christia with us as well. Thank you all. Great to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for your time. I guess, Rebecca, let's start with your reaction to this decision by Mattel.
Well, given their history of improving Barbie dolls and trying to come up to speed with the times of what families in today's world need, I saw this come out, and I was very interested. I read a lot of the media coverage. Time had some great information that they published and video they produced about it. And then I also read the marketing language that Mattel is using in the descriptions on their website and on Amazon. And what really struck me, that was a bit of a surprise, was there's a little bit of a disconnect in their PR publicity about this new toy and the marketing language that they themselves are printing. They're talking about it as being this character that could kind of be useful for gender nonconforming kids or families that maybe have a trans member of the family. But on the website with the product description, they're talking less about a trans identity and more about a child being able to make a bunch of different characters. So to me, that was sort of the big takeaway of, oh, wait a second. They're talking about it as a gender-neutral doll and perhaps conflating gender inclusivity and gender neutrality, which are two separate concepts, as they promote it.
Miro, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's an interesting take, and I think it's what they're trying to do, and they're walking a fine line in my mind. And I saw some of the same articles, and in the same article, which was odd, they both said this is not a gender-neutral doll, and then at the same time, another spokesman said yes. So they're trying to align their story, but fundamentally what they're trying to do is really tap into the cultural diversity of the country, of making these dolls relatable. They're not necessarily Barbie dolls. It's a separate line of dolls, and they are marketing them very differently. You have to go off the main website to get to Creatable World. However, what they're trying to do is really follow in line with when they launched earlier this year on the Barbie Fashionista line, all the Barbie dolls that had a different body shape, that had different hair textures, that were in some kind of disability, whether it's a wheelchair or a prosthetic leg. They're trying to make it more reflective of society, both on the Barbie side and creating a new line of dolls. Because at some point, Barbie won't extend to this, or Barbie has a very specific image, and so they have to figure out, well, how do we create a line of dolls that's going to be more inclusive and relatable to kids across the board.
Christia, how important, though, is it for a company, any company that may be in this realm, to start to consider these issues when they're thinking about their products that they're going to be putting out on the market?
Well, I think it's important. They have to ultimately be able to sell the products. And so they've really spent about 30 years making things increasingly pink and increasingly blue. So it's interesting. They're really reflecting that there has been a backlash against that trend. And I think there is a much more prevalent idea that kids are much more gender diverse and gender expansive. So even if you're not thinking about trans kids, there's kids that are just expressing gender in a way that's not strictly across a binary. And so I think they're really trying to tap into that group of kids that seems to be growing every year. And I think trying to say we want you to be able to see yourself in the dolls that you're playing with.
And realistically, Miro, we're talking about the end decision in many cases is going to be made by the parents. So Mattel, while they hope that these are products that will be used by kids around the country, around the world, they are really have to gear this towards the parent that is making the decision to either buy or not buy the product.
Yes. And at the end of the day, there's a couple things that, one of the things that changed the doll market, and I want to get back to your specific question, is when Bratz launched their line of dolls that ultimately they, in 2008, it changed the way kids looked at dolls. They were very different. Even Barbie has Monster High, or Mattel has Monster High. They have a lot of different dolls for young girls that are in the ages of 5 to 9 to 12 that align with a different individual sensibility. Mm-hmm. So in this particular case, they're going to market a lot in children's channels, and so kids are big influencers of parents. But at the same time, parents are going to make the final decision. But if the kids say, "Hey, this is kind of cool," and there's some dimension of this, I can change the hairstyle. It's more reflective of me, or I like the clothes. Whatever that dimension is for that kid, mm-hmm. that parent is going to get it. And one of the interesting things about this doll is that they talk about it being a kit, that I can kind of make a whole host of different looks for my doll for $30, and parents are also looking for value, so this could be an interesting option for them.
Rebecca, your thoughts?
I think that is correct. A lot of the disconnect between the marketing language and the PR language, I think, has to do with trying to cast as wide a net as possible to different types of audience members, right? So what seems newsworthy is that this is Mattel's first gender-neutral doll. They're presenting as gender-inclusive, but I'm sure they want to reach out to many different audience members, including possibly parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, who may not necessarily be in the generation that is truly moving in that gender inclusivity direction, but appreciate the idea of a doll that is many dolls in one, right? That's one of the ways that they're promoting this with all the outfits, the hair changes.
Right.
So I think it does seem to be a good value for the money, given the number of outfits that come with it. And again, it comes down to, will the adults making the purchases buy this for their kids if the kids influence them enough?
Christy, I was thinking about this, and there's also, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the element of the development of the thought process of the mind of younger kids as they are growing up, as they are using these dolls, but also as they are thinking about these types of elements mm-hmm. and decisions that they want to make. And I think there's a benefit in that area as well.
There is. So, I think, from my perspective as a developmental psychologist and thinking about how do kids think about their own gender and how they can express it, I think that there is some value in dolls that simply at a very basic level allow girls to have either short or long hair, or girls to wear shorts that aren't highly sexualized, to see that there's multiple ways to even be feminine. Because really, when you look at these dolls, they really still look like girls, and they're still wearing pretty feminine clothing. Mm-hmm. So, I think also calling it, gender inclusive it still leans feminine. But even if within that constraint, it still allows kids to see there are kind of diverse ways to express oneself or to present oneself. And that's really, especially for this age group, is a really important thing to think about for them.
But I would think, Miro, even the terminology creatable world kind of opens the door to more options for the consumer, the child, the parent to think about, in comparison to getting, X Barbie doll that has one or two patterns that it may be able to kind of lead the child down.
Yes, I think that is really important. I think one of the things in the new product development process for any toy company is they're looking at these various trends that are that are societal trends, because one of the things that both Hasbro and Mattel realize is that the age framework for young kids has narrowed. It used to be toys would extend to 12 and 13 years old, and with video games and other electronic games that has narrowed down to maybe 9. And so making sure that it's it's things that kids can relate to at their level, but at the same time be very fun is really critical. So a couple of things about the process.
Yeah.
This took a long time. They said it was an 18-month process, but here they did something really different. Normally, in any kind of development process, you focus on playability, but here they talk to physicians, they talk to experts about kind of the role of dolls and how dolls can reflect society. They play tested this with 250 families around the country before they came out with the whole line. And that's really different. It's similar to what, for example, Dove did with the Campaign for Real Beauty. When they redefined beauty, they went outside the normal marketing channel of the traditional marketing research and really asked consumers through psychologists, how do you define beauty? And that changed the whole dialogue and launched the whole Dove, self-esteem fund and things like that. And I think Mattel is attempting to do something similar in deciding how do I change the conversation and make it more playworthy, but at the same time valuable. And I think that's, as I think Christine said earlier, they really are looking at these various segments that are becoming a more important part of the overall landscape of the United States in terms of the breadth of diversity.
So then what would have been the normal process that a company like Mattel would have gone through prior in terms of getting ready to market a particular product, Miro?
Normally there are, ideas come from a lot of different places. They get kind of layered into a whole, waiting list, so to speak, and they just play test them, and they test different dimensions of play testing. How do kids enjoy the product? But here, layering in the physicians, the experts, is a little bit of a different animal. They kind of shaped it to kind of assess how kids behave, and as opposed to just reacting to their behavior. So they took a couple steps before the normal process to get a better set of insight about what could work and what are the triggers that will make kids engage better. Because all this with the different outfits, the different hairstyles are really important, because kids to be able to customize and to really fire their imaginations is extraordinarily powerful. Independent of all the inclusivity aspects of it, those parts of play value are really key. And like it was mentioned earlier, Barbie, there's a lot of different Barbie types, but it's Barbie at the beach or Barbie here or Barbie there, and it kind of puts you in a box. And here it gives you the pure world of playing with your imagination.
We're joined on the phone by Rebecca Haynes of Salem State University in Massachusetts, Christia Brown, who is at the University of Kentucky, Miro Copic, who is at San Diego State University. Your comments are welcome at 844-WHARTON, 844-942-7866, or if you'd like, send us a comment on Twitter at BizRadio132 or my Twitter account, which is at Dan Loney, Loney 21. I think, Rebecca, it's still an element of importance, the fact that there are areas of research that are still continually needed about understanding some of the dimensions about the human brain at a younger age and understanding how the brain works and how it is reactive to certain situations.
I would agree with that. From the area of scholarship that I work within, it's really important to consider from a cultural studies perspective the socializing function of toys, right? So if we look at toys as sites of negotiation between the culture and the children who play with them, you can actually think through, what does it tell a child that our society values when they are provided with the option of certain types of toys to play with, right? Once upon a time, little girls were really only provided with baby dolls to play with, which socialized them into the mindset of, girls grow up to be mothers. Mattel did make a big change when they introduced Barbie and had girls thinking through their play about this aspirational idea of being a career woman, about being an adult. So now this does have some very interesting implications that I think some psychological research could also dovetail nicely with, in terms of, what does it mean in a productive sense when we are providing children with toys that teach them that, our society recognizes gender can be flexible or fluid.
Christia?
I think that's completely, right. I think that representation is really critical in toys and in children's kind of media. I think it's an important part of feeling a sense of value and feeling like you kind of connect with others. So representation matters a lot. We know that we see that when it comes to race and ethnicity. That mattered when toys became a little more racially diverse. It matters with body size. So we've seen research where kids feel better about themselves when they're playing with, typically sized dolls, for example, instead of the very thin Barbie doll. And we know that the types of play they do inform what types of things kids can envision for themselves. So, somewhat counter stereotypically, when girls were playing with the career Barbie dolls, where, Barbie was dressed up like a scientist, they were actually feeling less motivated to do those types of science jobs, partly because it didn't fit their idea of what a scientist really looks like. So for better or for worse, the power of these toys really is impacting what kids kind of think is possible, if they can envision themselves. And so I think really paying attention to, now there should be research on how do kids feel about these types of dolls. Is it serving, the goal of making them feel more included and represented? Or is it having some kind of reaction that we couldn't have anticipated because we're not quite in the mind of a 4 or 5 year old?
But Miro, I think, and maybe this is a tad bit of the cynic in me in making this next comment, in the fact that the timing of this, obviously debuting this late September, early October, we're going into the holiday sales season. Obviously, it's a product that is geared to try and reach as many people as it is. There's an element of them thinking about the social component of this, but there's also the bottom line marketing of this as well.
At the end of the day, they're a company, and they are looking to make to be profitable and to sustain the business going forward. So on the validity of the kind of research that was done and needs to continue to be done, really critical. The thing here, unlike Barbie, which was just mentioned, that it's aspirational, and do young girls see themselves as astronauts in the way Barbie is, or a doctor, or whatever? That is a valid statement. However, what it boils down to is that in the toy industry, depending on the company and the brand, between 60 and 80% of the revenues for different toy types occur between October and the end of January. So the holiday shopping window, it's heavily weighted there. And as a launch pad for, maximizing sales, but at the same time maximizing exposure, building awareness, generating focus, this is really critical for Hasbro. And so their work, if you go to their website, or the Creatable World website, very much highlighted at Walmart, at Target, on Amazon, and they're going to have major displays. Since where it used to be with Toys R Us, Toys R Us was a great laboratory, and they could have rolled this out a little more subtly, see kind of the engagement, and then really expand on it. They don't have that choice anymore because those big box retailers don't carry anywhere near the same number of SKUs, the individual products, that a Toys R Us used to carry. So Walmart might carry a quarter of the items. Same with Target. And so getting this out in a big way, and getting those displays in the store is vital, because at the very least, if the parents hadn't seen all the PR, they're going to stop and they're going to take a look at this, and the kids are going to look at this, and they're going to just decide on the merits of the package and what's in it itself. Because even though Mattel is going to drive this, the fact of the matter is that only a small percent of the population will see any TV commercials, will read this in the paper or some kind of social media site where this is posted. And so getting it out now is critical.
And Rebecca, that was going to be my next point, is that kind of in this world that we are surrounding the toy industry, coverage like this and other media outlets and the social media component becomes very important for the company to be able to really, I think, try and find the level of success they would like to have with this product in the first place.
Yes, absolutely, especially where this isn't a Barbie doll and isn't part of that brand that already has such visibility. They needed to make a huge splash in terms of publicity, public relations, the social media presence. All of the things that they're doing are indicative of a multi-pronged strategy to find the audience that they know exists for this product. As long as they can find that audience, they should be able to sell it. But, without Toys R Us being around anymore, as Miro just said, parents can't just walk through and say, oh, wow, that looks really great. I think it raises the bar for what is required in advance of a product's release in this industry.
Well,
you're going to find your market.
Can you go back there for a second? It's something you mentioned. You mentioned it not being a Barbie doll. Can you explain that a little bit further?
Absolutely. So Barbie dolls are dolls that are an adult woman, right, typically with more exaggerated proportions. She's buxom. She's got a narrow waist. She's at adult proportions, about a size 0 or a size 4, depending on which stats you look at. This is a doll that has a childlike body. It is not part of the Barbie line, so it's not like it's Skipper. It's not like it's Barbie's little friend.
Right.
It's a separate line by Mattel that they are not promoting as a Barbie doll.
Right.
It's not on the website with Barbie or associated with it. Now, of course, you know as well as I do, children who have Barbies are likely to play with these together.
Correct.
But they're being very careful, I think, also. They're hedging their bets. They are not risking the characteristics of the Barbie brand, which is heavily gendered, by introducing a gender-neutral or gender-inclusive doll into that line. Could it be next, though? Could be if this is a success.
So, Miro, there's a little bit of, I guess, protecting the quote-unquote Barbie brand in this as well.
Oh, absolutely. Barbie is one of the top 2 brands at Mattel. It's billions of dollars in revenue. And they have started, as I mentioned a moment ago, started moving Barbie in with their Fashionista line into different body types, different hair types. If there's any disabilities, they've worked very hard at creating in the Barbie line, inspiring women like Sally Ride and Rosa Parks. They have Marvel characters, so they've expanded the Barbie line to be more fantasy, more aspirational, different from traditional Barbie. But this is absolutely, as was just mentioned, that these are young girls. So these are, it's very relatable to the kids, whether it's a boy or a girl. The one thing that I'll mention is that social media, as was just noted, is going to be critical. Online, women are really incredible allies in general in social media. Women, far more than men, engage, promote, discuss, have robust conversations, and have groups of say, for example, a mom group. This becomes really critical that if there's an alignment with parents, that can be a viral effect that a Mattel is hoping for in this particular instance.
Christy, you got about 45 seconds left. If you can, talk about for a moment the aspect of social and cultural validation that could be coming forward with a product like this.
Well, I think that we know that kids that are gender kind of non-conforming are really the most at risk. They have bad kind of self-esteem concerns, depression concerns, anxiety. They're really vulnerable, partly because they don't see themselves reflected. So I think if you can have any kind of toy that says you're valued and you're not unusual, you're just not the kind of what we see every day. I think that's a powerful message no matter what. And I think if this brings boys to the table of playing with dolls, there's lots of value of playing with dolls in terms of taking care of them. So I think if it brings boys to the table, that's also a benefit.
Great having you all with us. Thank you, Rebecca. Christina, thank you. Miro, thank you as well. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Rebecca Haynes at Salem State University in Massachusetts, Christina Brown at the University of Kentucky, Miro Copic at San Diego State University. We'll take a break. Second hour of Knowledge Wharton getting underway in just a minute. Sirius XM 132, Business Radio, powered by the Wharton School.